Roxana and Father Jacek. How are you both doing?
Hello, Jonathan. Thank you for having us.
Wonderful. Greetings from Durham, North Carolina. I'm doing very well.
Fantastic. Well, thank you both for joining the GCCM podcast. We're talking a little less than a week before the U.S. election. And obviously our conversation will pertain to the U.S. election, but it can be applied to any election all over the world, of course. So just to get right into it, Roxana, thanks again for joining us. A little bit, Roxana Bendezú. I got it right. A little bit about Roxana, Communications Coordinator at Pax Christi USA, and in the past has collaborated with such groups as the Office of Migration and Refugees of the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, and both of you happen to be in Durham, North Carolina, an odd coincidence that we learned earlier. But
Yes.
Roxana, go ahead, sir.
Small comment, or big rather, this is land that was stewarded by Ino and Okinichi peoples, and definitely want to bring that to this space to recognize that creation in this part of the world has been stewarded for millennia.
Yeah, very good point. Thank you for raising that. I wanted to start with you on Pax Christi USA recently came out with the Statement of Principles ahead of the U.S. election. And how should a Catholic go about forming his or her conscience ahead of voting, ahead of stepping into the ballot booth or ahead of mailing their ballot? What are the steps?
Well, the reason why we came up with this idea of having or issuing a statement of principles was because obviously we can't tell people how to vote, and nobody should feel that they can do that. But we can talk about our principles and principles that relate to the multiple issues that we're dealing with in this nation, but also around the world. Because as we know, foreign policy, U.S. foreign policy affects the entire world. So we need to have an internationalist lens when reflecting about our votes in this country. And so that's part of the process of that we offer for people to look at this statement of principles, discern, sit with it, pray further. Of course, we also included a prayer in our communications that talks about that discernment, and then truly look at your local issues and see what's going on there, because this election is not only about choosing a president, it is also choosing other leaders in our communities.
Mm-hmm. And on that statement of principles, so many different issues were listed. Of course, it wasn't just, caring for creation or the climate crisis or other life issues. And that lends it to as if we Catholics should think of all the issues, right? Not just one issue or two issues or cherry pick maybe your favorite. It should be considering all of them. Or how should Catholics kind of consider that aspect of voting?
Correct. As we know, and as we remember the words of Pope Francis, we need to consider a variety of issues. And I don't want to attempt to remember the exact words, but there are the human life has different stages and has different needs. And so if we look at the entire human life, then we're going to encounter issues like protecting creation, like what we're dealing with education, with the economy, with this military force that has been created in this country, and so many others, right? And so that's why we consider it important. People have to not only, of course, have life, but also live,
mm-hmm.
and live with dignity.
Mm-hmm. And Father Jacek Orzechowski, thank you again for joining us. Didn't mean to exclude you, of course, in the beginning, but you were mentioning just before this, there's an interesting example in North Carolina where you are, a swing state, so a lot of a lot of tension, I guess you could say, in the state, of course, on who they'll vote for president. But you were mentioning an example in which some people were saying certain people can't vote for X candidate. Do you want to explain that anecdote and kind of what your reaction as a Franciscan priest would be to that?
Thank you. So yesterday I had there was a situation at hand at my parish, Immaculate Conception in Durham. We have a parochial school, and as the children were being picked up by their parents from school, there was a group of men with a huge banner saying you cannot be Catholic and vote Democrat. So right now I just finished writing a letter to the parishioners, just kind of responding to that. Over the last few weeks, there are a number of parishioners that send me a copy of there's 2 videos that have gone viral of Catholic priests making the claim, very partisan. And first, they do not represent the view of the Catholic Church, and in fact, their partisan political statements are harming the Church, undermining credibility of the gospel. Now, I in my work, my ministry here at the parish, I try to hold up the values, the gospel values, the Franciscan vision, and also invite people to reflect on the signs of the times. And when I do that, there are some parishioners, some people have a problem with that and keep saying that this is the only issue that matters is abortion. So I want to take this. I think we need to deal with that narrative rather than gloss over it. And but I myself, I am very much consider myself to be pro-life, but I do not. Being pro-life is also means being in support of the policies that protect the earth from ecological collapse. It means promoting or kind of making sure that we elect politicians that could tackle the issue of nuclear disarmament and deal with issues around systemic racism and social inequalities. And these are all respect for life issues. Torture is respect for life issue. International policies, respect for life issues. As Catholics, we must not sacrifice the integrity of the gospel for political expediency. And I keep saying that. Or to be manipulated by those who are interested, well, maybe not so much in a pro-life cause, but in getting the people to support their particular candidate. We have about a decade to implement very decisive, drastic measures to switch to renewable sources of energy and to really kind of change our lifestyles, change our policies, if we want to prevent the collapse of the human civilization as we know it. I also tell people that part of being Catholics is to listen to the Word of God, not only written in the Scripture, but also in the book of nature, to pay attention to what the earth is saying. Pope Benedict XVI had a wonderful statement, probably about 12 years ago or so. The earth is speaking to us, and we must listen and decipher her message if we want to survive. So what is at stake in these elections is whether or not we'll be able to survive as a species, given the short amount of time that we have to really pivot towards a sustainable model. And again, we must avoid false choices between respecting human life, the life of the unborn, the life of the poor and most vulnerable, and care for a common home. Again, it's and just like as Christians, we believe in Jesus Christ being human and divine. It seems like, and it's not much, but it's so pivotal, so important. And in the area of kind of the politics, also respect for human life, but care for our common home.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying Catholics should consider pro-life much bigger than one issue, no matter what issue you're talking about. Look across the spectrum of issues.
Yes, and I would say not only look at the rhetorics, but look at the integrity of also the people who make the proposals. We believe as Christians in Jesus Christ, who described himself as the way, the truth, and the life. And when I listen to someone who is reportedly making 50, an elected official who's making on average 50 misleading false statements, in a person who is in the highest position of power in the world, that should concern me and concern the rest of us. On the issue of abortion, Joseph Stalin, who was one of the greatest butchers in the history of the humanity, he abolished abortion in Soviet Union in 1930s, and that was on the books until his death. Was he pro-life hero? I don't think so. So again, as people gifted by God with the gift of intelligence and hindsight and kind of insight, foresight, we should take the information that we have available, reflect on it from the perspective of the gospel, and do not allow ourselves to be duped. Or one of the things that I do is, in addition to the sources of information that I rely on, I also watch the other sources of information of the news, people that I disagree with, just to kind of make sure that I don't stay in my own kind of bubble. And I oftentimes advise people to do that, regardless of their political affiliations.
Mm-hmm. History always has all sorts of lessons. Very well stated. Good point, Father Jacek. Roxana, I wanted to come back to you to ask, you had kind of touched on it in the beginning, and Father Jacek mentioned it a little bit too, but can a bishop or a religious sister or a priest or the facilities manager at a church, can that person say to you, you can't vote as a Catholic, you can't vote for X candidate. You can't, it is against your faith. I mean, they can say it obviously, but does that rhetoric have any place or have any meaning or?
Well, first of all, the designation of our churches is 501c3s. And in the US, that means that we cannot be partisan. So it is absolutely outrageous to tell someone how to vote. And that is the reason why we talk about the issues, why we discuss what are our principles, not only as Catholics, but as human beings. What do we believe in? And, the reflection considering our Catholicism is really interesting because they're not only Catholics in the US, right? They're Catholics all over the world. So we really have to think about all peoples. We have to find that Jesus in all peoples, in all faces. And so to talk about from a perspective of nationalism is really such an obtuse way to think about this. We need to believe the words that we read and the discussions that we have and the discernment that we do and really truly act upon it. And that is difficult to many people because they have been exposed to narratives that are really obtuse. And so it is time for us to open this discussion and have conversations. We don't need to tell anyone how to vote, who to vote for. We need to start talking with each other. Honestly, at this point, people can't even talk with their own family members. It's really hard.
Myself included.
Myself included as well. It's really hard. And so how do we move away from that? It's going to look different in different spaces. Mm-hmm. But when we're dealing with 227,000 deaths in the US alone of coronavirus, we really need to put more effort into this discernment, into this process of making the right decision.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And how do you, for either of you, how do you go about having that conversation, talking about the issues and what they mean to you as a human being, as a Catholic? How do you, you both mentioned a difficult conversation with your families, probably every family, not only in the US, but around the world. So how do you have those conversations? How do you start to have those conversations?
Well, I've been having conversations not only with some family members, but with fellow parishioners that I know, that I respect, and at times they would jump into conclusions and stick a label on me, communist, leftist, and sometimes I would say in those cases, well, this is your right to do that, but you have to be consequential. So if you are willing to put that label, you should be also putting the same label on the prophets, on a lot of saints, on Jesus himself, and I'll be happy to be in that company, as much as I don't like the label. Another thing that I try to appeal to is the notion of freedom of conscience, that we believe as Catholics that in the presence of God, in our conscience, a very kind of intimate part of who we are, and we should be careful about demonizing or impugning evil motives to other people. Thank God I'm not like one of those leftists, those communist Democrats, as an example. I'm putting myself kind of better. I despise, I look down at the other, or sometimes it happens across another kind of political lines. And presuming that we have the monopoly on truth. And the gospel teaches us humility, warns us against the leaven of Pharisees. Look at, thanks God that I'm not one of those tax collectors. I'm better. So we have, as a church, a long tradition of very healthy introspection, examinations of conscience, honesty, that guards us against a certain arrogance. And I do see that at this time, we as a church, lay people, sometimes priests or kind of bishops, get out of line. And as much as we speak about religious liberty and kind of human and conscience, we may trample down upon it.
Well, in that respect, I have to say that for me, it's been better not to push any type of conversation. And it's particularly difficult now that we are, not able to gather. And so I find a lot of solace in my work, actually, as in my role of communications with Pax Christi USA, but also in this other nonprofit that I formed the beginning of last year called Migrant Roots Media. It is an organization that focuses on addressing the root causes of global migration. And so really digging into the historical context of this massive displacement that is happening and has been happening for years now. To look into, for example, one of the factors, U.S. foreign policy. And so by doing that work, I find a lot of peace, really. And I'm able to connect with many people, create a space for them to write their own stories, to put them into historical context, and to also find a little bit of healing in that process. And so I think for me, it's just looking at the constructive effort rather than, the conflict. What can we do that reflects our vision for this world, that is liberatory, that truly reflects our principles as those stated in our statement of principles.
Mm-hmm. And focusing on bringing those to life, kind of rather than maybe, dwelling on where you might disagree with whomever, but focusing on, okay, we have this, let's build on this kind of.
When we show the work, and particularly when you accompany those directly affected, that's where you really find peace for yourself, but also that's where others get perhaps a change in hearts, right? Like when they see what you're doing out in the world. So, and I think, didn't Pope Francis also say something about go evangelize and only use words as a last resource or something like that? I'm paraphrasing. But that's the idea.
And also for me, first I have to, especially as we come closer to the election, and I'm very concerned. I'm very concerned about what's going to happen, the impact that it's going to have, about possible incidents of domestic terrorism, as it already was, a number of those attempts have been folded, but also a lot of people in our parishes will be profoundly impacted too. And now, what do I do to create bridges, not to throw more gasoline into the fire, and at the same time speak the truth? So, on that end, I have to take care of myself in terms of rooting myself in prayer and contemplation, so that I don't snap at other people. Next week, this coming Sunday, we will be celebrating All Saints' Day, and that's yet another resource for all of us, saints as women and men who faced some insurmountable challenges, and yet they dare to believe in benevolent God, and that somehow, as difficult as their task were, they had a role to play. So in this heightened political context, the divisiveness, this is my and yours path to holiness, how to be a peacemaker, how to be prophetic, and saints can be a great source of inspiration for you and me.
Any particular saints come to mind? Who's the patron saint of elections?
That's a good question.
Who would be, I guess? Go ahead, sorry.
Well, actually, you know what? There's as a Franciscan, we have this wonderful image. I don't have it here with me, but it's by Giotto, and it depicts Saint Sebastian. I'm sorry, not friars. Sebastian, Saint Sebastian, in front of the city of Arraso, and the painting shows devils over the city and people quarreling, but it harkens to the story of how Francis sent Brother Sebastian, to deal with the situation. There was a division and fighting between groups of people at that time, and what Francis and Sebastian did, they first prayed, so that they approached the situation from the contemplative stand, and then they somehow were able to get the two warring factions to a table, and they, according to St. Bonaventure, rewritten the statutes and laws and statutes. They made some systemic structural changes in how they may be addressing the imbalance of power. So I would say that Saint Francis may be not only a patron saint of animals, of the ecology, but also of political engagement, and being a peacemaker and building bridges between people.
I think that's the best answer we can have. So I think that works for me. Roxana and Father Jacek, thank you so much. Anything else? I want to stick to the time we discussed, but anything else you think it'd be good to mention, as a lot of people have already voted in the US, but as people head to the polls on Tuesday, but then also people all over the world as they participate in elections and think about how to vote as a Catholic.
I wanted to bring to the space also the spirit of St. Oscar Romero, a person who supported those who organized against the military of El Salvador, that was actually supported by the US and trained by the US. And to really remember him, and of course, as well as Rutilio Grande, who will hopefully be a saint as well very soon, and think about their vote as something that will not only affect the US, but will affect the world. And try to vote for the person who would address this in a better way. But after the election, keep being engaged, keep organizing with others, because we don't have, none of them provides a full answer to the issues that we're facing. in the US and outside. And so we need to keep gathering, reflecting together, and taking action together.
Definitely. Father Jacek, any final advice, any final words you'd like to share? For a lot of devoted Catholics, the issue of being pro-life is so important, and I want to affirm that. And at the same time, I think being pro-life, it means to pay attention to the kind of the science of how the life how life begins. I mean, recently I had a chance to watch this video about the early human development, just filled with wonder and awe at the mystery of how we were made. But to do that, we need to, with integrity, we need to also pay attention to the wonder and awe of God's creation that's being aborted. That's yet another form of abortion, and we are inadvertently, whether I like it or not, are part of it, casting their votes, and that's the kind of the stuff for us to pray over, to reflect on, and to take action in the spirit of integrity and holiness. And again, may the saint, may the cloud of witness accompany us, and may we lean on them in these trying times. Pray, reflect, and take action. I think both of you ended on similar notes. So thank you again so much, both for your time and sharing your wisdom. And we shall talk soon. So thank you again.
Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you for having us.
Peace and all good to everyone.